Poor old North Korea, all those tantrums, all those nuclear launches, but the world is too busy to take any notice of it. Because all the focus is on Ukraine. Monday was more of the same. The US downplayed a missile test by Pyongyang, but on the same day, Joe Biden was signing a crucial bill. One that could change the tide in Ukraine. It's called the Lend-Lease Act. Does it sound familiar? The Lend-Lease Act was America's trump card in World War II, especially the early part of the war. Back then, the US was neutral. President Franklin D. Roosevelt wanted to join the war, but the US public did not agree. They refused to pay for military aid to the Allies. That's when the Lend-Lease Act was signed. Under this act, the US shipped supplies worth $50 billion. And remember, this is in the 1940s, $50 billion. Today, that's almost $700 billion. How were these shipments different from military aid? You see, aid is free, Lend-Lease is not. The idea is that this military equipment will be returned, or at least some payment will be made. More than 70 years later, Lend-Lease has returned. How much money is America pledging this time? Well, that's the thing. Lend-Lease is not about the packages, it's about the process. Joe Biden can now send weapons a lot more easily to Ukraine. He's already moving in that direction. On Friday, a $150 million package was announced. Put together, Washington's total aid stands at $3.8 billion. And that is since the invasion. So $3.8 billion in less than 80 days. Reports say Democrats have agreed on another package. This one is worth $40 billion, 40 billion. It doesn't take a genius to guess what Biden is doing. He's not focused on defending Ukraine, he's focused on defeating Russia. All these weapons are intended to give Putin a bloody nose. But do his allies agree? Well, one of them most certainly does not. That's French President Emmanuel Macron. Macron's solution is rooted in diplomacy. He wants both Ukraine and Russia at the table, and most importantly, he does not want to humiliate Russia. His words, listen in.
We will have a peace to build tomorrow. Let us never forget that. I mentioned this earlier. We will have to do this with Ukraine and Russia around the table. The end of the discussion and the negotiation will be set by Ukraine and Russia. But it will not be done in denial, nor in exclusion of each other, nor even in humiliation.
Clearly, Paris and Washington are not on the same page. Biden is eyeing a victory. Macron is eyeing a peace deal. Question is, who does Europe follow? Emmanuel Macron's biggest ambition is to unite the continent, to take Europe out of America's orbit. And this is the perfect chance to do that. Macron is talking about amending the European Union Charter. He believes that Ukraine will not become an EU member, at least not anytime soon. So he's proposing a wider European community outside the Union, but allied with it.
This new European organization would allow democratic European nations adhering to our core values to find a new space for political cooperation. Cooperation in security, energy, transport, infrastructure, investment, and in the movement of people, and in particular, our youth.
That's an interesting proposal, but just one problem. A so-called wider European community does not help Ukraine. Neither does it help contain Russia. And maybe that's what Macron is calling for. We know he's not a military man. He's a consummate diplomat. So Macron's vision is of a united and peaceful Europe, one that accommodates Russia's concerns. Guess who else is pushing for that? Chinese President Xi Jinping. He spoke to German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on Monday. His message to Europe was clear. Be your own master. That's what the Chinese readout said. The security of Europe should be kept in the hands of Europeans themselves. The European side needs to show historical responsibility and political wisdom, bear in mind the long-term stability of Europe, and promote a solution in a responsible manner. What is Xi Jinping's play here? He's not concerned about Russia or Europe or Ukraine. He's concerned about his own interests. How can he weaken the transatlantic alliance? This may seem like the perfect opportunity. Until now, Europe and America came as a package deal. If Europe breaks away, it is advantage China. In theory, that could happen. But in practice, it's a tough sell. Even today, Europe is heavily dependent on American weapons. And don't forget, Europe only has 2 nuclear powers, Britain and France. London will not join any European community. So that's a lot of heavy lifting for France to do alone. The fact is, Macron's European experiment can go 2 ways. It can create a superpower Europe or an indifferent Europe. America will try to stop that from happening, but for that, they must change strategy. After all, it is Europe that must live next door to Russia. It is Ukrainians who must fight this war. For Joe Biden, it's just one sign on a piece of paper. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.